The arrival Cashin Wells pressed his fingers against his throbbing temples as another headache threatened to split his skull. 3 months on Aurora Station had aged him 3 years. The orbital colony hung between Earth and the luminary home world like a fragile promise, and he was supposed to hold that promise together with nothing but paperwork and forced smiles. The door chimed. He did not look up from his reports. "Come in," he muttered, expecting another assistant with another crisis requiring his immediate attention. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Silence followed. Cashin glanced up and nearly fell from his chair. Standing in his doorway was the tiniest alien girl he had ever seen. She barely reached 3 feet tall, her entire body seeming to glow with an inner light that made her pearl-white skin shimmer like moonlight on water. Large violet eyes dominated a delicate face framed by silvery hair that floated around her head as if underwater. She wore what appeared to be a traditional maid uniform, but scaled down to her miniature proportions, complete with a tiny apron that somehow looked both adorable and impossibly formal. She bowed so low her forehead nearly touched her knees. When she spoke, her voice chimed like crystal bells. "I am Vegzi of the Luminary Household Servants. I have been assigned as your personal attendant for the duration of the treaty negotiations." Cashin blinked. There must be some mistake. "I did not request an attendant." Vegzi straightened, and he caught a flash of something sharp in those huge violet eyes. "It is not a request. It is protocol. All human diplomats of your rank receive a luminary attendant. I scored highest in my class. I will not fail you." The way she said it made Cashin uneasy. It sounded less like a promise and more like a threat. "Look," he said carefully, standing from his desk. "I appreciate the gesture, but I really do not need anyone hovering over me. I am perfectly capable of managing my own schedule." Vexi tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under glass. "Your shirt is buttoned incorrectly. You have consumed 6 cups of coffee today, which is 4 beyond healthy limits. Your sleep cycle shows a deficit of 12 hours over the past week. You have ignored 3 meal notifications. Your stress hormones are elevated to dangerous levels." She took a step forward, and despite her tiny stature, Cashin found himself taking a step back. "You are not managing anything. Diplomat Wells, you are slowly destroying yourself." "This is where I begin." Before he could respond, she moved with startling speed. Her tiny hands unbuttoned and correctly rebuttoned his shirt with practiced efficiency. She produced a small device from her apron and scanned him, tutting disapprovingly at whatever readings appeared. "Immediate intervention required. You will eat a proper meal within the next 30 minutes. You will consume no more stimulants today. Tonight, you will sleep for a minimum of 8 hours. I will ensure compliance." The absolute certainty in her voice was both annoying and oddly comforting. Cashin opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Something in her expression told him that argument would be futile. The first day. First sign that Vexi took her job too seriously came within the first hour. Cashin had returned to reviewing treaty documents when she suddenly materialized beside his desk, holding a tray that seemed far too large for her small arms. "Lunch?" she announced, setting down a perfectly balanced meal. "Protein, vegetables, complex carbohydrates. You will eat now. I am in the middle of something important. Your health is more important." Her violet eyes narrowed. "Eat, or I will feed you myself." Cashin looked at the tiny alien girl, barely tall enough to reach his desk, and almost laughed. Then he saw the absolute determination in her face and wisely decided not to test her. The food was extraordinary. Cashin had been surviving on synthesized rations for weeks, and this tasted like real home cooking, a perfect fusion of Earth and luminary cuisine. "How did you make this?" he asked between bites, I have studied human nutrition extensively. I learned to cook 73 Earth dishes in preparation for this assignment. She stood with her hands folded, watching him eat with an expression of satisfaction. Your previous attendants were inadequate. I will not be inadequate. I did not have previous attendants. Precisely why you are malnourished and exhausted. This ends now. As the day progressed, Cashin began to understand the true meaning of having Vexi as an attendant. She anticipated his needs before he recognized them himself. Files appeared on his desk moments before he needed them. His schedule was reorganized for optimal efficiency. She dimmed the lights when his headache worsened and increased oxygen levels in his quarters when his concentration flagged, but it was her protective instincts that truly surprised him. A junior diplomat named Reeves arrived for their scheduled meeting, looking harried and speaking too quickly. Within seconds, Vexi had positioned herself between Cashin and the visitor, her tiny frame somehow radiating menace. You are agitated, she said calmly. State your business quickly or leave. My diplomat requires minimal stress. Reeves blinked at the tiny alien girl. Excuse me? You heard correctly. She produced a small device that hummed with energy. I am trained in 47 forms of protection. Size is irrelevant. Intention is everything. Your intentions feel unclear. Cashin stood quickly. Vexi, Reeves is a colleague. He is not a threat. She glanced back at him, and for a moment, vulnerability flickered across her features. You are certain? I am certain. She stepped aside, but remained watchful throughout the meeting, her large eyes tracking every movement Reeves made. After the diplomat left, Cashin turned to her. That was excessive, was it? Her voice remained calm, but something defensive crept into her tone. 72% of diplomatic incidents involve colleagues. Trust is the most dangerous vulnerability. Where did you learn that? Experience. She turned away, busying herself with organizing his desk. I will not allow harm to come to you. This is my purpose. There was something in her voice that made Cashin pause. Something that spoke of past failures, past losses. He wanted to ask, but the rigid line of her tiny shoulders warned him away. The evening crisis that night. Cashin learned that Vexi's dedication extended far beyond normal duty hours. He had just settled into bed when his door chimed urgently. Before he could respond, Vexi burst in, her hair floating wildly around her head, her eyes wide with alarm. Get up. Now. We must move. What? Cashin sat up, confused. What is happening? I detected anomalous energy signatures in the corridor. Someone has tampered with the security protocols outside your quarters. She was already pulling clothes from his closet, her tiny hands moving with frantic efficiency. This is an assassination attempt. Cashin's blood went cold. Are you certain? 87% probability. We do not wait for 100% when your life is at stake. She thrust his jacket at him. Trust me. The absolute certainty in her voice made the decision for him. He dressed quickly while Vexi sealed his door and activated some kind of portable shield device that shimmered with blue energy. Stay behind me, she commanded, her tiny frame positioned protectively in front of him. You are 3 feet tall, Cashin pointed out, even as he followed her instructions. She glanced back, and her smile was sharp and dangerous. On my world, the smallest creatures are often the most deadly. You will see. They exited through a service corridor Cashin had not known existed. Vexi moved with absolute confidence, her small size allowing her to scout ahead while Cashin followed. Twice she stopped him with a raised hand, her head tilting as she listened to something he could not hear. 3 hostiles ahead, she whispered. Former military contractors. Hired for wet work. They carry plasma DI. SRUPTORS. How can you possibly know that? I can taste the ionization in the air. I can hear their heartbeats. I can smell their fear. Her violet eyes gleamed in the dim light. They should be afraid. What happened next would be burned into Cashin's memory forever. The attackers appeared at the corridor junction, armed and dangerous. Vexi did not hesitate. She moved like liquid light, her tiny body somehow evading every shot as she closed the distance. Her strikes were precise and devastating. Pressure points that dropped grown humans like stones. Energy bursts from her small devices that overloaded their weapons and nervous systems simultaneously. Within 30 seconds, all 3 attackers lay unconscious on the floor, and the tiny alien girl stood among them, barely winded, her hair still floating gently around her head. She turned to Cashin, and her expression was pure concern. "Are you injured?" He stared at her, his heart pounding. "No, you just took down 3 armed assassins. Yes." She stepped over the bodies as if they were merely inconvenient obstacles. "This is why I was assigned to you. The Luminari knew you would be targeted. I am the best protection available." She paused, her tiny hand reaching for his. "I will always protect you. Always." The absolute conviction in her voice, the fierce loyalty in her eyes, made something warm bloom in Cashin's chest. This tiny alien girl had just saved his life without hesitation, had put herself between him and danger without a moment's doubt. As station security arrived to collect the attackers, Cashin found himself studying Vexi with new eyes. She was reorganizing his collar, tutting over a small tear in his jacket, already planning how to prevent future incidents. Her dedication was absolute, her focus unwavering. And somewhere in the chaos of the night, something had shifted between them. Something neither of them was ready to name, but both of them could feel building like static before a storm. The morning after Cashin woke to find Vexi sitting in a chair beside his bed, her violet eyes unblinking, watching him with an intensity that would have been unsettling if not for the obvious concern etched across her delicate features. Morning light filtered through the viewport, casting her pearl skin in golden hues that made her seem even more otherworldly. "You did not sleep," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Someone must maintain vigilance." Her tiny hands folded in her lap, proper and formal, but he noticed the slight tremor in her fingers. "The attack last night was coordinated. There will be others." Cashin sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. "Vexi, you cannot stay awake indefinitely. Even you need rest." Her expression flickered with something vulnerable before the professional mask returned. "My needs are secondary to your safety. This is established protocol." Protocol or obsession? The words came out sharper than he intended, softened only by genuine worry. "You are my attendant, not my bodyguard. I am whatever you require me to be." She stood abruptly, her small frame radiating tension. "The treaty negotiations begin in 3 hours. You must prepare. I have arranged enhanced security measures and restructured your schedule to minimize exposure." She moved to his closet, pulling out formal attire, but her movements lacked their usual fluid grace. Cashin crossed the room and knelt beside her, bringing himself to her eye level. The action clearly surprised her. Her large violet eyes widened, and for a moment she looked impossibly young and uncertain. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For last night. For everything. But you do not have to carry all of this alone." Vexi's expression crumbled for just a heartbeat before she rebuilt it. "Yes, I do." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I failed once before. I will not fail again." Before Cashin could ask what she meant, she had turned away, busying herself with preparations that suddenly felt like armor against questions she could not answer. Negotiation chamber. The treaty chamber occupied the highest level of Aurora Station, a circular room with transparent walls that offered breathtaking views of the stars beyond. Representatives from Earth and the luminary homeworld sat at opposite sides of a curved table. Tension thick enough to choke on. Cashin took his position, acutely aware of Vexi, standing just behind his right shoulder. She had changed into formal attendant robes that shimmered like captured starlight, her silver hair bound with delicate crystal pins. To observers, she appeared the picture of proper service. But Cashin could feel the coiled energy radiating from her tiny frame, could sense her eyes tracking every movement in the room with predatory focus. The head luminary negotiator, an older male named Torvin, with deep indigo skin and stern features, began the session. Before we proceed, I must address the incident last night. An attack on Diplomat Wells is an attack on these proceedings. The Earth contingent shifted uncomfortably. General Hartwick, a career military officer with more medals than patience, cleared his throat. We are investigating the matter. However, we must consider that internal luminary politics may be at play. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vexi's hand moved subtly to the small device at her waist. Are you suggesting, Torvin said with dangerous calm, that we would sabotage our own treaty negotiations? I am suggesting that not all luminaries support peace with humanity. Hartwick leaned forward. Perhaps some prefer to keep humans dependent on luminary technology rather than establishing equal partnership. Cashin felt Vexi tense behind him. He raised a hand before the situation could escalate. With respect to both parties, speculation helps no one. What matters is moving forward with proper security. Perhaps we should postpone until better measures are in place. No. The word came from Vexi, so sharp and unexpected that every head turned toward her. A tiny luminary attendant speaking out of turn was shocking enough. The fierce determination in her voice made it extraordinary. Apologies, she said quickly, bowing low. But postponement gives the conspirators time to regroup. Better to proceed with enhanced vigilance. I have coordinated with station security to implement comprehensive protection protocols. Torvin's eyes narrowed. You overstep your role, young one. She does her job, Cashin interjected smoothly. And she raises a valid point. We proceed, but with caution. The negotiations crawled forward, each side presenting proposals that the other immediately dismissed. Cashin found himself growing frustrated with the circular arguments, the posturing, the complete inability to find common ground. Hours passed in bitter deadlock. It was during a brief recess that everything changed. Cashin stood at the viewport, staring at the stars, when Vexi appeared beside him with a cup of tea. She had to stand on tiptoe to hand it to him, and the gesture was so earnest that it made his chest ache. You are discouraged, she observed. They do not want peace. They want victory. He sipped the tea, perfectly prepared as always. How do you negotiate with people who see compromise as defeat? Vexi was quiet for a long moment. On my world, there is a saying. The river does not fight the stone. It simply finds another path. Wise words, perhaps. Her voice grew softer. But sometimes the stone must be worn down first. And that takes time and patience and constant effort. She looked up at him, and in her violet eyes, he saw something that made his breath catch. Devotion. Not the formal dedication of an attendant to a diplomat, but something deeper and more dangerous. Something personal. Why are you really doing this? He asked quietly. The truth, Vexi, not protocol or duty. Why do you care so much? Her expression flickered through a dozen emotions before settling on resigned honesty. Because someone must. Because you are trying to build bridges while others plant bombs. Because you see people where others see only political assets. She paused, her tiny hand reaching toward his before stopping just short of contact. Because when I watch you work, I see someone worth protecting, worth believing in. The confession hung between them, intimate and raw. Cashin found himself reaching down, his larger hand engulfing her small one. The contact sent a shock through both of them, a connection that felt electric and inevitable. "Vexy," he started, but the chamber doors opened behind them. Reeves burst in, his face pale. "We have a situation. Someone just broadcast the location of every diplomat on this station to an encrypted network. Every single one of you is now a marked target." The siege chaos erupted across Aurora Station. Alarms wailed as security systems detected multiple breach attempts. The diplomatic corps was rushed to a fortified safe room deep within the station's core, a bunker designed to withstand anything short of a direct hit from a Yasum battleship. Cashin found himself pressed into the crowded space with dozens of other diplomats and their attendants. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across frightened faces. Vexy had not left his side, her tiny frame a constant presence against his leg as the crowd jostled and panicked. "How long can we hold here?" someone asked. "Hours, maybe days," General Hartwick replied grimly. "But we are sitting targets. They will find a way through eventually, Dot. Then we need another option." Cashin pushed forward through the crowd. "Is there any way to evacuate?" "Not without exposing everyone to hostile fire. The evacuation corridors are compromised." Vexy tugged on Cashin's sleeve. "There is another way." Her voice was barely audible over the crowd. "The maintenance tunnels beneath this section connect to the docking bays. They are too small for most species, but I can navigate them. You want to go alone?" Cashin shook his head immediately. "Absolutely not. Not alone." She looked up at him with determination burning in her eyes. "I lead. You follow. We reach the docking bay. We commandeer a shuttle and bring it to the emergency airlock. Everyone evacuates. That is insane," Hartwick interjected. "Those tunnels are a maze. You will get lost or killed. I am Luminari. I do not get lost." Vexy's voice carried an authority that silenced the objections. "And I am trained for exactly this scenario. But I need someone to cover my advance. Someone I trust absolutely." She looked at Cashin, and he understood without words what she was asking. Trust, partnership, a leap into danger together. "I will go with her." He said the plan was desperate and dangerous, which meant it was their best option. Vexy led Cashin to a maintenance hatch barely large enough for him to squeeze through. She had to crawl on her hands and knees through the narrow passages, while he followed in an uncomfortable crouch that made his back scream. Vexy moved with absolute confidence through the dark tunnels, her bioluminescent skin providing just enough light to see by. She navigated by instinct and training, never hesitating at intersections, always choosing the correct path. They were halfway to the docking bay when they encountered resistance. Armed figures blocked a critical junction, forcing Vexy and Cashin to backtrack and find another route. Time was running out. The bunker's defenses would not hold forever. "There," Vexy whispered, pointing to a narrow shaft that climbed vertically. "It leads directly to docking bay 3. But it is a straight climb. No safety protocols. If you fall, you die. Then I will not fall." Cashin moved to the shaft and looked up into darkness. "Together?" They climbed in silence, the only sound their breathing and the distant rumble of explosions as the attackers breached outer defenses. Cashin's hand slipped once, his heart lurching before his grip caught again. Immediately, Vexy was there, impossibly balancing on the narrow ladder while reaching down to steady him. "I have you," she said fiercely. Always they reached the docking bay to find it crawling with hostile forces. Vexy pulled Cashin into the shadows, her mind clearly racing through options. There were too many enemies, too few options, and time was evaporating like water in vacuum. "I can create a distraction," she whispered. "Draw them to the far side while you reach a shuttle. No." Cashin grabbed her shoulder gently. We stay together. She looked at him with such raw emotion that it stopped his breath. If I fail you here, if something happens to you because I was not good enough or fast enough, I will never forgive myself. The vulnerability in her voice, the absolute terror of loss, made everything clear. This was not about duty anymore. This had become something far more dangerous and infinitely more precious. Listen to me, Cassian said, turning her to face him fully. You have been trying to protect me from the moment we met. But protection is not a burden you carry alone. We protect each other. That is what partnership means. I am your attendant, she whispered. You are more than that. His hand cupped her small face, and the confession came without planning. You are brave and brilliant and fiercely loyal. You are someone I have come to care for far more than protocol allows. And I will not let you sacrifice yourself, because you think your life matters less than mine. Tears sparkled in her violet eyes like captured stars. On my world, admitting such feelings between attendant and charge is forbidden. It violates every code of conduct, and perhaps some codes need breaking. Cassian smiled, despite the danger surrounding them. What do you say, Vexy? Ready to break some rules? For the first time since they met, she smiled with pure, unguarded joy. With you? Always. The final stand, they moved together with the synchronization of partners who understood each other beyond words. Vexy's small size allowed her to slip between cargo containers, disabling security systems and creating pathways that Cassian could follow. He provided the physical strength to overcome obstacles, the strategic thinking to plan their route. Together, they were formidable. The shuttle bay held 12 evacuation craft, but all were locked down by hostile control. Vexy worked frantically at an access panel, her tiny fingers flying across alien interfaces, while Cassian stood guard with a weapon salvaged from a fallen attacker. How much longer? He asked as footsteps echoed closer. 30 seconds. Her voice remained steady despite the pressure. These security protocols are military grade. I need time we do not have. Cassian checked his weapon's charge. They are converging on our position. 20 seconds. A hostile team rounded the corner, weapons raised. Cassian fired, forcing them back behind cover. Return fire peppered the container they hid behind, superheated metal shrieking as it was torn apart. 10 seconds. Vexy, we need to move now. 5 seconds. Her hands never stopped moving. Trust me. The attacking forces rushed their position in a coordinated assault. Cassian emptied his weapon's charge, dropping 2 before it died in his hands. He turned to tell Vexy to run, to save herself, but found her standing tall despite her tiny frame. A defiant smile on her face. Done. She pressed one final command. Every shuttle in the bay roared to life simultaneously. Their engines created a wall of sound and heat that forced the attackers to retreat or be incinerated. Emergency systems activated, filling the bay with suppression foam that hardened instantly around the hostile forces. Trapping them in place, Vexy grabbed Cassian's hand. Run. They reached the nearest shuttle and threw themselves inside as automated defenses came online. The craft systems recognized Vexy's biological signature and sealed the door behind them. Cassian collapsed into the pilot's seat while Vexy worked the controls with practiced expertise. Can you fly this thing? He gasped. I can fly anything. She brought the engines online with a roar. Hold on. The shuttle launched with enough force to press them back into their seats. Vexy's piloting was aggressive and brilliant, weaving through defensive fire with impossible precision. She brought them around to the bunker's emergency airlock and held position while the trapped diplomats evacuated, one by one. They loaded onto the shuttle, each face showing shock at being rescued by a tiny luminary and a human diplomat who should have been cowering in safety. General Hartwick was the last aboard, his expression caught between gratitude and disbelief. Impressive work. he said gruffly as Vexy set course for the nearest Allied vessel. "You saved a lot of lives today. Not just doing my job," Vexy replied, but Cashin heard the exhaustion creeping into her voice. She had pushed herself beyond all reasonable limits, and it was finally catching up to her. The Allied cruiser Steadfast received them with full military honors. Medical teams swarmed the shuttle, checking everyone for injuries. Cashin watched as Vexy deflected attention, insisting others needed care more urgently. Always putting duty before her own needs. It was only when they were finally alone in a recovery room that her armor cracked. She stood at the viewport, staring at Aurora Station in the distance. Fire still bloomed across its hull, where battles continued to rage. Her reflection in the glass showed unshed tears balanced on the edge of falling. Cashin moved to stand beside her. "You did everything right," he said quietly. "You saved everyone. I endangered you." Her voice broke. "I let my feelings compromise my judgment. A proper attendant maintains emotional distance. I failed that most basic requirement. You did not fail. You were extraordinary. I was selfish." She finally looked at him, and the anguish in her violet eyes was devastating. "From the moment I met you, I wanted to be more than your attendant. I wanted to be important to you, special, and that desire clouded my duty. It made me take risks with your life that I had no right to take." Cashin knelt, bringing himself to her level, just as he had that first morning. "Vexy, nothing you did was selfish. Everything you did was brave. You protected me, yes, but more than that, you believed in what we were trying to accomplish. You believed in peace. Peace cannot exist between our species." She turned away. "Today proved that. There are too many who profit from conflict, too many who fear change. What we want is impossible, only if we give up." His hand found hers, warm and steady. "And I have learned something about impossible things recently. Sometimes they are just difficult things that require the right partner." She looked down at their joined hands, her tiny fingers wrapped in his larger ones. "You deserve better than a broken attendant who cannot separate duty from desire. I deserve exactly you. Fierce and loyal and brilliant. Someone who sees protecting me not as obligation, but as choice." He smiled gently. "Someone small enough to fit through maintenance tunnels, but strong enough to carry the weight of the world." That got a wet laugh from her. "I'm rather good at maintenance tunnels. The best." Cashin used his free hand to tilt her face toward his. "Here is what I know, Vexy. I know that protocols and rules and proper behavior are important. But I also know that sometimes the most important thing is simply being honest about what we feel. And I feel something for you that goes beyond diplomat and attendant, beyond human and luminary. Something real and terrifying and wonderful." Her tears finally fell, tracking down her pearl skin like liquid diamonds. "On my world, such relationships are forbidden. The power imbalance, the potential for abuse, it is considered unconscionable. Then perhaps," Cashin said carefully, "we need to change what we are to each other. No more attendant and diplomat. Just two people who survived something terrible together and discovered something beautiful in the process. You would give up having an attendant? I would give up anything that prevents us from being equals. Partners in truth, not just in danger." Vexy studied him with those impossibly large eyes, searching for doubt or deception, and finding only sincerity. "You are serious. Completely. The smile that broke across her face was like sunrise after endless night. "You are the strangest human I have ever met. Is that a yes?" "It is a perhaps." She stood on tiptoe, and even then, Cashin had to bend significantly for their faces to be close. "There are complications. My people will not understand. Yours may reject it entirely. We will face opposition from every direction. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. Especially then. The Crystal Caves, the official inquiry into the Aurora Station attack, took 3 days. During that time, Cassian and Vexi gave testimony, endured interrogations, and weathered suspicious glances from both human and Luminari officials. Their growing closeness had not gone unnoticed, and disapproval radiated from multiple directions. On the 4th day, Torvin requested a private meeting with them both. They met in a neutral conference room aboard the Steadfast. The old Luminari sat with the weight of authority and tradition. His indigo skin marked with the light patterns of someone who had lived a long and complicated life. "I have read both of your reports," he began without preamble. "What you accomplished was remarkable. You saved dozens of lives and exposed a conspiracy that threatened the entire peace process. Thank you," Cassian said carefully, sensing the other shoe waiting to drop. However, Torvin's gaze fixed on Vexi. "There are concerns about your conduct, young one. You violated several protocols, exceeded your authority, and most troubling of all, you have developed an inappropriate attachment to your charge." Vexi straightened, her tiny frame radiating defiance. "I fulfilled my primary obligation. I kept Diplomat Wells safe. At what cost? A proper attendant maintains professional distance. Your actions suggest emotional compromise. My actions saved lives." Vexi's voice carried steel beneath the music. "If that is emotional compromise, then I am guilty and unrepentant." Torvin's expression softened slightly. "I do not doubt your courage or capability, but you must understand why this concerns your elders. The attendant system works because of strict boundaries. When those boundaries blur, exploitation becomes possible." "I am not being exploited," Vexi said firmly. "Perhaps not. But how can we be certain? The power dynamic between human diplomat and Luminari attendant is inherently unequal." Her voice dropped. "I watched my own sister fall in love with the human she served. When it ended badly, she took her own life. I will not allow another promising youth to walk that same path." The revelation hung heavy in the air. Cassian finally understood the depth of concern, the fear driving the strictures. "With respect," he said quietly, "Vexi is not your sister, and I am not whoever hurt her. We both understand the complications. But we also understand that connection between people, real connection, transcends species and protocol." Noble words. Torvin stood slowly. "But words are easy. Living with consequences is hard." He moved to the viewport. "There is an old tradition among my people. When a relationship seems impossible, when outside forces align against it, the couple retreats to the crystal caves beneath our home world. There, isolated from society, they discover if what they feel is genuine or merely circumstantial attraction. Are you suggesting we undergo this trial?" Vexi asked. "I am suggesting that if you truly believe what you have is worth fighting for, you will welcome the opportunity to prove it. 30 days alone together. No outside contact. No duties or obligations. Just two people discovering if they can build something real away from the pressure that forged their initial bond." Cassian and Vexi exchanged glances. She gave a tiny nod. "We accept." Cassian said, 30 days. The crystal caves of the Luminari homeworld existed deep beneath the planet's surface. Vast chambers filled with formations that sang when air moved through them. Bioluminescent organisms covered the walls, providing soft light that shifted through colors like slow auroras. Cassian and Vexi descended into the caves, carrying only basic supplies and each other. The entrance sealed behind them, leaving them truly alone for the first time since they met. The silence was profound. So Cassian said after a long moment, "What do we do now?" Vexi looked around the vast chamber they occupied. "We live. We talk. We discover if we are compatible without the adrenaline of constant crisis. The first week was awkward. Without danger to face or duties to perform, they struggled to define their dynamic. Cashin kept trying to defer to Vexy's preferences, while she automatically tried to anticipate and fulfill his needs. They circled each other like dancers who had forgotten the steps. On the 8th day, Vexy finally snapped. "Stop treating me like I am fragile. I saved your life multiple times. I am not some delicate thing that needs protecting from honest conversation." Cashin laughed, the sound echoing through the crystal formations. "You are absolutely right. I apologize. Shall we start over?" "Yes." She sat down across from him, cross-legged and determined. "Tell me something true. Not diplomat true. Actually true." He thought for a moment. "I am terrified that I am not good enough for you, that I will disappoint you when you realize I am just a mediocre human who happened to be in the right place at the right time." Vexy's expression softened. "Your turn to ask Dot, are you afraid of what happens after these 30 days? What it means for your life, your career, everything you worked for." Terrified. But also, she paused, searching for words, excited. "I spent my whole life following rules and protocols, being perfect, never questioning. And then I met you, and suddenly, perfection felt less important than being real." They talked through the night, sharing histories and fears, dreams and disappointments. Cashin learned about Vexy's childhood, the pressure of being the smallest in her class, but determined to be the best. She learned about his sister's death, the guilt that still haunted him, his desperate need to make his life mean something. As days turned to weeks, comfort replaced awkwardness. They developed routines, exploring different chambers, discovering underground pools where they could swim, caverns where the crystal formations created natural music. Vexy taught Cashin her language, not through formal lessons, but through shared laughter and gentle correction. He taught her earth songs, his voice echoing through the caves while she hummed harmony. On the 20th day, they found a chamber where the crystals grew in a perfect dome overhead, creating a ceiling that looked like a frozen starfield. They lay on their backs, watching the bioluminescent organisms pulse with slow rhythms. "I do not want to go back," Vexy whispered. "Is that terrible? To want to stay here forever where nothing complicated can touch us?" "It is not terrible, just impossible." Cashin reached for her hand. "But maybe we can take some of this with us. The honesty, the simplicity of just being together." She rolled onto her side, propping herself up to look at him. "I love you. I need to say it out loud at least once where no one can tell me it is wrong or inappropriate or impossible." Cashin sat up, bringing them face to face. "Then I get to say it too. I love you, Vexy. Your courage and your vulnerability. Your fierce dedication and your secret playfulness. All of you." The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and answer in one. She tasted like the cave's mineral water and something uniquely her. His hand cradled her small face, careful and reverent, while her fingers tangled in his hair. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "How do we make this work?" she asked. "In the real world with real complications?" "Carefully," he said, honestly. "Together, we will face opposition and judgment and 1,000 complications. But if what we have here is real, then it is worth fighting for out there, even if we fail, even then. Because trying for something beautiful is never wasted effort." They returned on the 30th day. The cave entrance opened. They emerged together, hand in hand, into the luminary sun. A delegation waited, led by Torvin and General Hartwick. Both wore expressions of cautious curiosity. "Well?" Torvin asked simply. Vexy stepped forward, still holding Cashin's hand. "We survived 30 days together, without killing each other. We talked and argued, and laughed and learned. And at the end of it all, what we feel is stronger, not weaker. That does not make it appropriate. Someone in the delegation muttered, "Perhaps not by old standards." Cashin moved to stand beside Vexi, united front. "But maybe it is time for new standards. The galaxy is changing. Species are mixing and learning from each other. Holding on to rigid protocols because we have always done it this way seems like the opposite of progress." Hartwick cleared his throat. "The Earth government is prepared to recognize your relationship as legitimate, provided it does not interfere with diplomatic duties, and the Luminary Council." Vexi asked, looking at Torvin. The old Luminary was quiet for a long moment. "My sister died because she loved someone who did not love her back. Because the power imbalance and social pressure destroyed something that might have been beautiful." He looked between them. "I see no such imbalance here. Only two people who fought side by side and chose each other with clear eyes. The Council will not oppose this, though some will grumble." Relief flooded through them both, visible in the way tension drained from their shoulders. "There is. However," Torvin continued, "one condition. They waited. Tense again. You must continue the work you started. Peace between our species. You two have proven it is possible to build bridges across differences. Now you must help others do the same." Cashin and Vexi looked at each other and smiled. "We can do that." Vexi said, "Together." Cashin added, 6 months later the new Aurora station rose from the ashes of the old, rebuilt as a symbol of cooperation rather than tentative alliance. Cashin served as chief cultural liaison, while Vexi held the newly created position of interspecies coordinator. They worked side by side, no longer bound by attendant protocols, but by choice and partnership. Their quarters overlooked the station's central garden, a hybrid space where earth plants grew, alongside luminary crystal flowers. It was their favorite place to end each day, standing together at the viewport while the galaxy spun overhead. "Do you ever regret it?" Cashin asked one evening, his arm around her shoulders. "Giving up the traditional attendant path for this chaos?" "Never." Vexi leaned into him, her tiny frame fitting perfectly against his side. "Though I do miss having an excuse to boss you around about proper nutrition. You still do that anyway." "Yes. But now you are allowed to ignore me." He laughed and bent to kiss the top of her head. "I could never ignore you. You are impossible to ignore. Good." She tilted her face up toward his. "That was always the plan. One tiny alien maid taking her job so seriously that an entire diplomatic corps had to pay attention. You succeeded spectacularly." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Two unlikely people from different worlds who had found something precious in the space between duty and desire. It would not always be easy. There would be challenges and setbacks, moments of doubt and difficulty. But they would face it together, the tiny alien girl who took her job too, seriously, and the human who learned that the most important things in life are worth taking seriously indeed. And in the end, that made all the difference. The end.